morning and welcome to the local scene with Don DeBAR. I'm Don DeBAR. This is the first program that we've produced since September 11th, and I would like to start just for a very brief moment without belaboring the point, expressing the condolences of just about every person I've spoken with over the last week and a half, to those who have suffered a loss, the thanks of just about everyone I've spoken with to those who have rolled up their sleeves and set to work to try to find people that are missing, console people that are that need to be consoled, to supply the people that are working at the downtown Manhattan site, the people that tried to rescue people the day of the event that lost their lives in the process, the people that have provided support for that, and everyone that is seriously spending time trying to think through both the ramifications of all of this for ourselves, for those folks who have suffered a loss, and for the future of a lot of things. In any event, thank you to everyone who's put in all this time and effort, and we'll move on to our business to show our gratitude that we still can do this. In the newspaper over the last week, I'm going to grab that. In the North County News, there was the first publication of some materials that I had sent out a few days prior. Let me try and frame this. It has to do with the, we're talking about the Ossing waterfront proposal that is still languishing behind closed doors after, being, I would say, humiliatingly defeated in the court of public opinion last March and prior August. And various incarnations of that plan suffering the same fate over the previous year and some months. The village apparently is not going to advise the public of the plan that they intend to enact once they get the pesky November elections out of the way, until after those elections. And they will instead leak out small details that indicate some movement towards what the people of the village of Ossining want, and hope that there's enough both out of the block of voters that will vote this November, people that don't care about the waterfront or don't see it as an important issue or as one of the important issues, people that just vote for the incumbents no matter what, whether it's based on party or just incumbency or whatever, and that there'll be enough fall off out of the many people in the village of Ossining that are outraged over the plans that they do have. Maybe some of that'll fall off, thinking, gee, maybe they're moving in the right direction, without having to present anything concrete in time for people to analyze it and make a decision based on it. So it seemed to me that it was the time to spell out in some concrete terms some of the alternatives that they should pursue. And I have been doing that over time. I started with something I had published in March of 1999, actually, as a proposed alternative, which had to do with looking at developing the district, the WD1 district, at least from between the two bridges, over time towards primarily recreational and green space uses. In other words, a healthy amount of parkland and some supporting river-related commercial uses. That over time, as the focus of the village's efforts has changed, as I've spoken with more and more people and heard from more and more people in the village about what they'd like to see happen, my grasp of the issue has been informed by that, and obviously from the perspective of a public official, the village officials should obviously primarily be viewing it from that point of view. In other words, the point of view of what the people, the residents that own the property would like to see happen at the site that is under discussion with Capelli, and in general what the community would like to see happen in the larger environs of that, which we're talking again, the land between the railroad tracks and the river, bound on the north by the Snowden Avenue Bridge and on the south by the bridge next to the train station. So that's in the larger case. That is the Waterfront District 1, more or less, from the boat club to Salazzo's, and on that side of the railroad tracks. And the site that is under discussion with Capelli at the moment, or at the last moment that we heard anything, is the site between the Kilbrook and the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, and between the tracks and the river. Now, over the course of the village's negotiations with Capelli, and at least from October 6th of 1998, when Capelli was designated by the village board the official developer for the Ossining downtown waterfront, as it's called, and I don't know, about 10 minutes ago, I guess the thrust of the discussions has the modality of presentation of proposals has been that the village negotiates a comprehensive package of things that include the sale price of the property that the village owns, and some of which is done prior to knowing the actual cost of acquiring it to sell it, and then many modifications to the existing codes and laws and approvals of many bodies that may or may not be within the control of the village board that would enable such a project to happen. Slapping all of that together privately and then presenting it with some fanfare. And they have gone through that now 3 times. Once in the designation of Capelli and the presentation of the proposal that Capelli had made to the village in order to obtain that presentation, to obtain that designation. Secondly, the actual thing that was presented for the execution of the development agreement in March of '99, which was an upsized version of what they had proposed in order to get the approval by the village. And then they scaled down sideways sort of proposal that was presented in July 3rd of 2000, July 13th of 2000, whereby everything more or less on the east side of the railroad tracks was dropped and everything on the river side of the railroad tracks was intensified, except for the open space aspect. Through all of this, the village has claimed that each of these proposals is the natural, legitimate heir to a history of planning and community involvement. Having had some, familiarity with both, not quite the familiarity I've acquired over the last 2.5 years, tearing through the four corners of the documents of this, but I was paying attention, and I went to some of those hearings, and I spoke with people that were going to the hearings, and I read some of the documents, and I read the newspapers, and I read, other materials, that were involved. And I thought that that statement that this is more or less the product, direct product of all of that community input and planning work was not true. So over the course of this, process, since I would say at least since March of 1999, various groupings of people have fallen into work with each other, and some formalized into organizations, and others within existing organizations, and perhaps working with other organizations on informal task forces now to try to exert some influence over the process that the village board seems hell-bent on bending to its own idea of what should happen. And in the process of of all of that, people organize, and the group that has been working directly on the issue is the Austin Waterfront Alliance, and I'm a member of that, as are I don't know what the membership is up to now, a few hundred people. I know there's several dozen active people that have worked on different tasks over the last year, and so within that, there are a small group of people, which include the president of the Austin Waterfront Alliance, Ted Kuhn, and particularly Ted Kuhn, and I would say I don't know who else wants to be known as that, who has to worry about some sort of retribution from the village or whatever. So I won't name anyone else. I'll leave that to them to do. In any event, Ted Kuhn was particularly interested in studying the planning history of the village of Austin with respect to the waterfront, and studied thoroughly the planning documents, started writing extensively about them, and became kind of I wouldn't say obsessive, because that's inappropriate. Obsession is kind of blind to the material condition, or the necessity around a particular condition. I would say he was enthusiastically imparting the information about this to me, and for a good while, I had my own fish to fry, so to speak, on the sections of this process that I was working on. I have, however, was informed by what he said, and now looking at his work, am quite impressed, and particularly by this fact, that the essential, and I'm going to take it out of the article that was published in this week's, it's the week of September 19th, North County News. What was contemplated for the property that the village is trying to sell to Capelli involves no residential development whatsoever, a very small, low-scale commercial component that is directly water-related or water-dependent. We are talking about restaurants, and not many. We're talking about buildings that are 2 and 3 stories, with perhaps at most a 30-foot wall to face the river, surrounding a rather large and substantial village green, which they indicate. This is indicated in several planning documents, including the master plan of the village, which was developed only 6-7 years ago, as the product of many public hearings and much public discussion. I'm going to show you first an aerial view of the waterfront, which is on camera 2 here. You're going to see my dopey head probably cut through this picture for a minute. Sorry about that. Oh, I was able to avoid. I'll try to give you like a little outline here of what we're talking about. It is the area from here out to here, down, and over here. This is these are the railroad tracks. It's the Ossining Railroad Station. So this is the area, and perhaps here we could center that a little better, make that a shot of the site proper. So let's see, what are we going to do? You could pan that left, I guess, and then zoom in a little bit. Pan it substantially left. So that's correct, just like that. Maybe even a little more. So the railroad tracks, that's correct. Yep, and then maybe just, actually that's perfect. Right here is the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club. Okay, right here is the ferry dock. Right here is where the Kilbrook empties into the Hudson River. And this is where it crosses where Westerly Road, which is the road this is Snowden Avenue's ramp. Okay, this is the railroad station's ramp. Okay, Westerly Road runs along the west side of the Hudson line of the Metro North, right along the railroad. Again, for reference, here's the train station. This is the existing property, Maui property. Here's the old Maui oil building. This is where the stage is that they used for concerts and other events over the last few years. And this is where they parked all the school buses. In fact, you can still see them there at that time. This very small area here is what's going to end up being left as a park. This is where Capelli proposed to build one building. This is where he proposed to build another, leaving a small area open in between. What does the planning of Ossining's master plan contemplate instead for this property? This is the question. And now we're going to take a look at camera 3. And excuse the poor graphics at the moment. We're going to flesh this out into some models, actually, and some maps over the next 2 weeks. However, this is the same property. Here's the ferry dock. Here's the Kilbrook. Here's the railroad station. Okay, just this parcel that we were just looking at, Boat Club, Kilbrook, Hudson River, Railroad. Okay, this public green is what they thought was the most essential, and I'll read you from this, the most essential aspects of it. They suggested some sort of a structure here, municipal type. One of the things they suggested was moving the guard tower from down by the sewage plant, the one that's on display, up to here. There are other suggestions also. This building here is, I believe, the remains that they suggest leaving of the bus company building. It's the brick part of that building, which faces onto Westerly Road. They also recommended leaving the Maui building and the Flavor Sciences building. That's the brick building that's also along here, and then the Maui building is a concrete block building that is in the other park right now. In here, various configurations of two-story, small-scale commercial buildings tying this together, creating like a plaza, not a wall, and facing out to this large public green on the river, which would then be joined down below here to the other park that exists at the waterfront, Engle Park. So I'm going to, while we leave that there, I'm going to read you some of the planning documents. Well, first I'm going to read the piece that was in the North County News, just so you get an idea of what we're talking about. Because as a, not as your TV host here, then not as the, person, one of the people working on this, trying to stop the village from wasting this property, but rather as a candidate for the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees in November, I issued a position as a candidate which I believe is consistent with what I've learned people want and consistent with the planning history and with common sense and financially viable for the village. So here's the article. It says, candidate supports the alternative plan for Ossining waterfront. The candidate for Village Vossing Board of Trustees announced support yesterday, that was Tuesday, for an alternative plan to develop the village riverfront. Green Party candidate Don DeBAR released the details of his plan, saying it respects the interests of the people of our village and would serve them well for many years. DeBAR advocated support for the Chadbourne study, which suggested creating a continuous riverfront green from Kilbrook to Austin Boat and Canoe Club and to be linked to Engle Park. If the Chadbourne study were followed literally, the Maui building and the brick portion of the old bus company would remain, DeBAR said. They would be joined together by two-story structures, making a curved facade facing the river, serving as a backdrop to a large public village green on the river. DeBar's plan is a response to Capelli Enterprises' proposed 225 luxury apartment complex with retail space development along the waterfront. Capelli is currently negotiating with village leaders to reduce the project density. Secretly, they are. That's what they say they're doing. We have no idea. DeBAR recently sued to halt those secret meetings between the two parties. No decision has been made by the court, and the meetings have continued. I got 10 minutes, or is that just... yeah, I got 10 minutes. Good. I don't know if you just picked that up off the floor, and I caught a glimpse at it. DeBAR is one of two candidates scheduled to face incumbent trustees Miguel Hernandez and Eugene Napolitano in November. Tom Langston is running on the Republican ticket. DeBAR said businesses offering river-dependent or river-related uses, and there are definitions of those in the Chadbourne study, could find homes in the buildings, and under his proposal, and actually it's under the Chadbourne's proposal, the village will retain ownership of the property, which it loses in the Capelli deal. The village could collect rents from the businesses, have them sign long-term leases, etc. Those folks who have read yesterday's New York Times, that would be Friday the 21st, I believe that's when it was in, you'll see a full-page discussion article about the top 10 developers in New York City talking about what should be built at the site of the Twin Towers. It seems a little premature to me for everybody to be carving out their turf, but it's a very informative discussion in that it explains, and I think either Thursday or Friday's Gannett paper had a shorter explanation, the concept of, it's essentially a triple net lease, it's called, where one entity owns the property and then another entity operates it, leases it, the entire site, and then sublets to the tenants that will actually occupy. There are some benefits to everyone in that scenario over an outright sale. With respect to the village, the main benefit is that they don't lose the property forever, but rather say for a 10 or 20 or 30-year period to let somebody else operate it within very controlled parameters that they can then evict them if they stray from those parameters, or they're in a better position if the project doesn't work and somebody's going to scrape the site, they're driving it. I mean, if, say, Capelli buys the project, buys the property, his economics are such that it makes more sense for him to scrape an apartment building off there and put in a nuclear power plant or something. That's going to be his call, and the regulatory authorities. But in that scenario, for example, the village would be primed out of it. But if the village retains ownership of it and then the same project or some other project doesn't work, they have the option of saying, okay, we'll scrape it off and do a new project, or saying we're going to, sell the property to somebody. You are in the driver's seat. That's the point. Chadbourne study recognizes the advantages of that 6 years ago. As anyone familiar with various concepts and types of ownership, tenancy, all of these, various things that have to do with the use and disposition of real property, understand. People that are professionals. For anyone that's interested in that, by the way, there is what is called the CLE, a continuing legal education course being offered by the New York State Bar in November. I don't have the details with me, but it occurs to me it might be useful to some people that would like to know. It has to do with negotiating strategies for commercial leases, but I think some of the fundamental work that will be covered will cover some of this in Westchester. It'll cover some of the concepts and some of the practices that exist in order to explain the negotiating strategies. I would highly recommend the attendance of every person on the Ossining Village Board and on the staff that's doing the work, with Paul Shue, Lynn McCrum, everybody that's involved in that. But certainly the mayor and the 4 trustees, or the trustee-elects at that point in November. If you're interested, drop me an email and I'll send you the details, about this. I got 5 minutes left. All right, so let's see. Also, Riverside Walkway can be developed along the waterfront. Residential uses would occur only on the westerly marina property. They're talking about having mixed-use waterfront, but not mixed-use villages 4 acres to the extent that you put 200 apartments there. What they believe, what they found, I guess would be, what they posit as a theory, is that developing this property, that is the, I'm going to go to this big map real quick, camera 2, developing this property here in a fashion that encourages people to use the waterfront for recreation and entertainment. A couple of restaurants and things with this big park. Let me show you, as opposed to this, they're talking about this being a park. All of that, and along the road here, some 2- and 3-story, water-related commercial uses, restaurants, shops, rent a paddle boat, that kind of stuff. And then up here, as I said, this is our downtown waterfront, on the actual waterfront. Up in here, that would encourage the owner there to think about developing that property for residential use, or adding for mixed use, but with a residential component. So I don't know, the existing zoning, the zoning that's, that came from this planning, was about 18 units an acre. I would say that gives him the possibility of building like 60 units maybe up here or something, if they decided to do that, and that would come at the expense of some of the commercial uses that exist there now. The logic of this is, to me, so apparent. Looking at any successful waterfront that I've ever seen anywhere, I just can't imagine that instead the idea is going to be to start building towers along the river, starting with the only land the village has direct control over. On Wednesday night, we're going to go into this in depth. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I got 2 minutes. We're going to also discuss the existing condition. Oh, I wanted to tell you just very quickly, particularly people that live near St. Anne's or whose kids go to St. Anne's, I found out this past Wednesday night, the 20th or 19th, that Sprint proposes to put 6 cell antennas on top of the apartment building next to St. Anne's. Okay? The village has decided to hire Monroe Telecommunications to advise them in that process. Just so you know, that's who advised the village of the Ossining School District on the Sprint cell tower application on the high school. I suggested to the board the other night that they find somebody else, and that they do outreach to the people around St. Anne's, and that they look at the 2 proposals by Sprint, that one and the one on top of the school, sort of together with respect to whether one mitigates the other. They apparently intend to do nothing. We're going to talk definitely about the grant money that the village refused and admitted they will have refused to investigate about some waterfront development. Like $1.5 million they're not interested in trying to get. Talk to you later. Take care of each other. This is a really difficult time, and we need to keep our wits about us, don't we? Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.